Good morning, Twin Cities. Welcome to the first ever radio show, Reckoning with Real Estate, a show about the American dream and building a better real estate company. I'm Paige Kale, and I am with the Real Estate Collaborative, and today we have Taylor Hall with us, who is also with the Real Estate Collaborative. She's a realtor, and she is also the owner of Evergreen Collective, which is a no-waste store on Grand Avenue. And today's episode, we're going to start out by talking about the story about the Real Estate Collaborative, which we refer to as REC. So you'll hear REC a lot during this episode. And we're excited to be here and also kind of terrified, but we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to start. Let's start with introductions, and then we'll get into the story of REC and how we got here today at the studios of AM950. Taylor, why don't you start with your introduction and Evergreen Collective and how you came to REC and all the good stuff.
Yeah, so my name is Taylor Hall, and I own Evergreen Collective. We've been open, it'll be 3 years. September 16th, so in just a couple days.
That's my birthday.
Oh my gosh.
Just FYI, fun fact.
I love that. So it's a double fun day now.
You'll never forget, nor will I.
Yeah, I love that. And it really just started with my love of sustainability and my love of homes, because I want to fill my home with products that, are just better for the planet and better for... There's also a component of making sure things are ethically sourced. So my love of people and respect for our community locally and globally, because we source primarily locally when we can, but that's not everything. So we also source from products all around the world. And then from there, I decided I also wanted to get my real estate license because I love homes so much. And I met an agent who works with the Real Estate Collaborative, Megan, and instantly knew that working with the Real Estate Collaborative was the perfect fit for me, values alignment. I love breaking systems, which is why my store is a refill store, and the Real Estate Collaborative is also about, reckoning with real estate and kind of breaking down how realtors do what they do and how we can make it more transparent and really consumer focused and not just all about those big commissions checks.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And I haven't heard you talk about your store and kind of that way before. So that was fun to hear. And yeah, Taylor got her license earlier this year and joined REC. And did you talk to other brokerages? I can't remember.
I probably should have, but I didn't.
You did. Yeah, I remember we met, and then it was a pretty fast and furious, it just happened, which was awesome. And I so appreciate what you're doing with Evergreen Collective and how that ties into, I think you mentioned, the value alignment between Evergreen Collective and the Real Estate Collaborative. I should also mention that Taylor is a sponsor of this radio show, so you'll hear some of her commercials during the week and during this show. For today, she's here in her capacity as a realtor with REC. And I'll take a few minutes and just talk a little bit about my background and why we're here today and what we hope to bring to folks who are listening. I've been a realtor for about 21 years. And prior to that, I worked in affordable housing finance, and I also have a background in architecture and urban planning. And honestly, when I became a realtor, I was moving from the nonprofit world to the very for-profit world, and it felt a little bit like crossing over to the dark side, which I say that a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but it was a hard transition. But I knew it was something that I wanted to try out. There's such a huge benefit being your own boss and being able to somewhat set your own hours, although, with your clients, you really have to kind of go with what they're doing. I realized early on in my real estate career that there were some things in the industry that didn't really align with my values and how I wanted to operate. And the industry really is, the real estate industry, up until several years ago, tends to be kind of monolithic. In other words, there's one model, like I call it the traditional kind of corporate model, which is about that 5, 6, 7% split between the two agents, the buyer's agent and the seller's agent. And so the percentage structure of real estate, where, you know, if it's $1 million house, it's a much higher payday than if it's a $200,000 or $300,000 house. You know, and I recognize pretty quickly that selling a larger house, a more expensive house, is definitely more work, but it's not that much more work. So the big commissions just, and I will say that I tend to be a bad capitalist. So I know, you know, people like, if you can make the money, why not? In my mind, I really wanted to, I had been thinking about creating a brokerage for about 10 years probably. And some things happened in my personal life and also my professional life that about 3 years ago, I just decided. I was on a plane and it was like a download onto my laptop, and I knew what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. And thankfully, I had a couple people join me early on, which was huge because I couldn't have done this by myself. So, you know, big takeaways, how we're different, how REC is different, is our commission structure. We're flat dollar amounts. We're not a fixed rate company, so it's not like every buyer we charge this amount, every seller we charge this amount. But it always is a flat dollar amount. So when you sign a contract with us, you know what you're going to pay at the time of signing the contract, regardless of if it's, you know, you're buying a $500,000 house, or if you end up at a $700,000 house, the amount you compensate us is the same. What else? Do you want to say anything about that, Taylor? Anything additional?
Well, I think one thing I'm curious about is I always forget your background in urban planning and architecture, and I think it's fascinating because I took a few kind of like urban planning classes when I was in college, and definitely debated going into that. I mean, I debated getting like 1,000 different minors and masters, and ended up deciding not to. But how do you feel like that tied into creating the real estate collaborative, and what did you bring from that experience to the brokerage you created?
I think that was one of the first stepping stones. Like if I look back at my life, I don't want to start from the very beginning, but it's the housing justice piece of it, I think. And, you know, the Real Estate Collaborative, we're a full service real estate company. We do everything the big corporate entities do, and I would say we do it better. But then we also have the housing justice component of it. So there's and that's why we named the radio show Reckoning with Real Estate, because our industry, the real estate industry, has a pretty sordid past. I would say that there's some things that are still happening that aren't great. I have a lot of respect for my fellow realtors. I have a lot of friends that are realtors, so I always feel like I need to add the disclaimer that this isn't about individual realtors. It's really about the real estate industry. I think we have played a part in why housing prices are so high when we're charging these huge, enormous commissions. And there's a reason that we're charging those commissions, and we'll dive deep in some future episodes on these specific things. But you know, and just the redlining and the steering and all the bad behavior, the deeds, the racially restrictive covenants, the National Association of Realtors back, you know, in 1910, 1920, helped draft those for builders so that they could restrict access to people of certain colors or faiths. So we have a pretty ugly past, and I think there's been a lot of apologies, but there hasn't been a lot of action to try to rectify the harm that we've done. And that's what, part of what we're trying to do with the Real Estate Collaborative. I think we also just want to shine a light on the housing crisis, and that we need a lot more housing in the Twin Cities and in Minnesota at large. And how can we all work together to make that happen?
Yeah, I think that's one of the big reasons why I decided to join the Real Estate Collaborative, was because of the housing justice component. It really, to me, didn't feel like just a regular real estate company, but one that was trying to bring so much more awareness to something that, since getting my license, I've had to explain. I've been talking about what we do, and I've had to explain redlining to more people than I thought I would have to, which, for those of you that don't know, that's when there would literally be places where people of color could not buy homes because it was written into their,
Yeah, that's a racially restrictive covenant, but I think what you're talking about is there was big areas. It happened mostly in the central cities back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, areas that were redlined by financial institutions.
It was the financial institutions.
In other words,
the big banks.
They wouldn't provide loans in those areas because they saw them as high risk, and what high risk meant was there was some threshold population of people of color in those neighborhoods. So it was very racially driven, for sure.
And we can see that today still in the neighborhoods around the Twin Cities, of where groups of people with similar skin colors live. It's still, and housing prices follow those lines typically. And it definitely cost people of color, primarily Black folks and African Americans, they don't have as much generational wealth because of that, which is just tragic, and I don't think enough people know about it.
Right. And one of my favorite quotes is, "You don't know what you don't know," and it's true for all of us. So I love that you were saying the other day that you've been wearing your legalized housing T-shirt at your store, and that people are like, well, what does that mean? And I hear the music creeping on, so we will pick up that thread on the other side of this commercial.
Oh, what a sight, wrecking balls in flight, bringing down the light. Every swing you take, mine art in the fray, crashing through these walls, take my breath away. Oh, wrecking ball, you steal the show.
Welcome back to Reckoning with Real Estate. I'm Paige Kale with the Real Estate Collaborative, and I'm here with Taylor Hall, also with the Real Estate Collaborative. Before break, we were talking about legalizing housing, and I imagine some people want to know what that means. When I wear that T-shirt, I usually get people asking me what it means at least one or two times, and if I go to the state fair, way more times than that. But legalized housing it references zoning regulations and building codes that make it very onerous and very difficult to build housing, number one, but certainly to build affordable housing. As an example, there's a city in the southern metro, and I'm not going to name it because I can't remember exactly which one it is, but any house that is built has to have a 3-car garage.
What?
Yeah.
A 3-car garage?
Yeah.
But how many people own, I'm sure a lot of people own 3 cars,
right?
Which is, we live in a very car-dependent society, which is another thing that I'm frustrated with. I would love to not have a car.
Yeah.
But it's not where I'm at in life. But 3-car garage?
Right. Well, and to your point, there would be plenty of families that could get by with a 2-car garage or a 1-car garage, and it probably tacks on, I don't know, an extra 20, like if it was just a 2-car garage versus a 3-car garage, maybe an additional $15,000 or $20,000, which is significant.
And takes up way more space.
Way more space.
So you have to build bigger houses on bigger lots.
Yep, exactly. And that's also another way. So all these laws were put into place, a lot of them, during kind of, for lack of a better term, like white flight from the city, or even before that, as they were building out neighborhoods like post World War II, cities were putting in place, it's called exclusionary zoning.
Okay.
Trying to exclude certain people. And the way they would do that, besides the racially restrictive covenants, which we can talk about in a second, but was they would say the minimum lot, you can only build 4 houses on an acre, let's say. Well, that's a huge lot size. Mm-hmm. Infrastructure is a huge cost that goes into housing, just getting sewer lines and water lines and all of that. Land costs is, well, now especially, incredibly expensive. So when you're requiring folks to have these huge lots, and then they'll have minimum footprint sizes of the houses, so the houses have to then be a minimum size. All of this just increases the cost, and then people can't move in because they can't afford it. Certain types of people.
Like, this is going back to my sustainability roots at Evergreen Collective, having to take care of that lawn. A lot of people use a lot of fertilizers and chemicals that end up in our waste streams.
Right.
And so the layers.
The layers. It's a lot of compounding issues. And
because then we have to drive farther, more gas, less walkability, less community.
Less community. Yep. And a lot of the... what was I going to say? Something you said made me think of something that I've now forgotten. I'll come back to it.
We'll get there.
Yeah. It'll come to me, or it won't, and we'll just move on. So your original question about, urban planning and how kind of that has impacted REC and the formation, the creation of REC. And I think it is just that housing justice piece. I never really lost that piece as I was a realtor with, one of the really big brokerages in town for the first 15 years. Then I went to a small boutique brokerage in St. Paul, and then I started REC. But that's, the housing justice piece never left me. So that it feels very satisfying to be building out a company with like-minded folks that kind of believe in the same things. And it's a pretty hard needle to thread. I know that's a super popular phrase right now, but because realtors are perceived in a certain way in our society, and I know our listeners just know what I'm talking about. I don't think we need to dive deep on that one, but
yeah, I know I've said this to you multiple times. When I was telling folks that I was deciding to become a realtor, I was getting some eye rolls and being another one, and now all I'm going to hear about from you is real estate. And now, because I chose to join the Real Estate Collaborative, I can be like, yes, I became a realtor, but realtor, I don't but we have another component to it, and we're actively working on making it more transparent and trying not to hike the cost of your house up for a bigger commission check, but trying to be more community focused and what do we want our neighborhoods to look like, and being a part of that.
No, that's awesome. And I think the whole idea of making our commissions commensurate with the work that we're actually doing. And we also have retainer fee options for folks that will save them money on the back end, which I think has been pretty revolutionary. I mean, that on the forums, on our state forums, that retainer fee has always been there, but I've never known anybody to use it.
Okay.
And, I think the real estate industry, part of the reason we're perceived the way we are is kind of on us and how we've operated over the years. And one thing that I think of in terms of compensation, I mean, it is hard. You never know how long it's going to take to sell a house, or for a buyer in this market where it's more of a seller's market, how long it's going to take for a buyer to find a house. And so that does make the pricing kind of, I think, as we've talked about a lot, it makes this flat dollar pricing kind of challenging. But
yeah, I mean, it's hard to sign a contract and decide to work with somebody, and you don't know how many hours it's going to take, and you don't know how long it's going to take to get that. But like you were saying, with the that upfront option of a little bit of a down payment with the realtor that the real estate collaborative offers, it guarantees a little more peace of mind on our side, which I think then lets us potentially provide better service.
I agree.
We're not gonna rush you into making decisions because we want that paycheck. You always call them, what's that, like,
the perverse incentives. Yes, our industry is wrought with a lot of them.
Yeah,
that being one of them.
Yeah, and we get to reckon with that.
Exactly. Well played.
Thank you.
Yeah, and in my experience, people have been more than willing to pay the retainer. Like I said, we have options. We have a no retainer option as well, because we recognize that some people just don't have the cash up front, and that's fine. But for the folks that do have the cash up front, they recognize that, yeah, you're doing a lot of work for me, and we want to compensate you, now and then on the back end as well.
Yeah.
So that's been, I wasn't sure when we started REC how that was all going to play out, but I think it's pretty great. I think it's beneficial for us. I think it's beneficial for the client. Another thing that I knew going into this was I didn't want to do dual agency.
Yeah. Tell us more about that, because most people don't know what that is.
And that is just a can of worms, but I will try to be brief. Dual agency is, there's dual agency and dual agency. So dual agency is when it's the same brokerage, but it's separate agents. It's two different agents working both sides of a transaction. One is with the buyer, one is with the seller, but it's the same brokerage. Dual is when it's the same agent working both sides of the transaction. And I think what most people don't realize, because the big brokerages do that all the time, it's legal.
And how many states?
Right. I mean, we're one of the last states to allow it.
Yeah.
One of a handful, maybe.
Yeah.
Still. So it lessens the representation that the seller and the buyer can get, because the brokerage is really who you're working with, and we're not able to advocate exclusively on the buyer side or the seller side. So it reduces the representation, but the brokerage gets paid the exact same amount as if it was full representation. That has never made sense to me. And when I worked with the big corporate broker trying to explain that to clients, it made me feel kind of gross. Like, they gave us scripts to use to explain it to clients, but and it was probably after 10 years in the business that I was like, this just doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
And but because our industry is like the largest trade organization lobbying group in North America, and in the state, I think there's just some financial or corporate pressures points that
keep it legal.
Yep.
Yeah. Even though it reduces our ability to serve our clients.
But we get paid the same.
Paid the same.
Yeah, so REC does not do dual agency.
And to be fair, it is something that you have to disclose to your client.
Correct.
It's not something that you're not going to tell them. You legally have to. They're aware that they're being served less.
Right. I mean, they actively have to sign that they agree to dual agency.
Yeah.
So,
but if they don't want to sign on to it, they might not get the house. or they might not sell their house.
Yeah, and what I was always told is if your client doesn't want to do dual agency, when I was with the big corporate broker, then you can't show them any of our listings.
Which reduces...
Which, I mean, it's a huge segment of the inventory because these big corporate brokerages have tons of listings.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the way you would, and then you're in front of people and they're like, well, we want to see your list. I'm not going to name the company. I'm going to try really hard not to name the company, but, we want to see all those listings. I mean, especially when there's a housing shortage and the listings are low and there's not, a lot of inventory to begin with.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people end up doing that. And
because are out of time for the day.
We are out of time for the day. So thank you for tuning in to our first ever radio show, Reckoning with Real Estate, with Taylor Hall and Paige Kao with the Real Estate Collaborative. And we will see you next week.
Yes.
Oh, wrecking ball.